Greetings everyone and welcome to another Imperfectly Sung song. This one's another unusual choice. It's The Monk of York by Pete Ryder. I don't really expect anyone outside my family to know this song because Pete Ryder is only really semi-famous and mostly among people he knows. But if any of you do happen to know any more of his songs and want me to sing any more of them, feel free to let me know. So the main reasons why I like The Monk of York, firstly because of its subject, because it has a Christian setting, being set in a monastery, but it doesn't really have a Christian message, it's just a silly song about a monk. And partly for its structure, because at the end of each verse it repeats at least part of the last line, usually in a different way, or by adding something, and quite often repeats at least part of the first line as well. So it really wouldn't work if you were just saying it as a story, but it makes it fit very nicely as a song. So I'll sing it for you now. Oh, there was a monk of York, and Bartholomew was his name. He'd been a monk for 30 years, ever since from the country he'd came, ever since from the country he'd came. 1 year upon St. Agnes' Eve, 1 year, Bartholomew went out through the gate, and he walked himself down to the fair, Later upon St. Agnes' Eve, so late, Bartholomew came back from the fair, and they found him lying at the gate, lying at the road of the gate. Oh, he'd been doing things that a monk should never do. He was still singing songs that a monk should never sing. They brought the abbot down from his room, who said, "This is a serious thing, a sad and a serious thing. For monks should not disport themselves this way. So for going down to the fair, Bartholomew will have to pay, Bartholomew he must pay. So bring a bell, a book, and a candle, and stones both great and small. Take the unholy, holy man, and wall him up in a wall forever, wall him up in a wall." So they made a chamber in the wall, not a yard deep and not a yard wide. They took Bartholomew from the gate, and they lifted him inside, He was still singing songs that a monk should never sing when they left him in the wall there all alone. They left him with a bell, a book, and a candle, and they sealed him in with stones, with mortar and stones. The very next morning at daybreak, next day as fortune did befall, 2 friars were walking in their garden, just outside the abbey wall, "Oh, brother, who is that I hear shout? Oh, who is that I hear call? It is as if the voice of a man cometh from inside yon wall, comes from inside this wall." So they brought a man with a hammer of iron, and they broke a hole into the wall. Then Bartholomew he stepped out, and stood there before them all, unsteadily before them all. "Oh, pray tell to us your name, and how you camest to be here." He said, "My name is Bartholomew, but apart from that, my memory's not clear, my memory is not very clear. I will not say what I'm not sure, lest I should make myself a liar. Just one thing I will ask of you, please will you let me be a friar? I could be a goodly friar." For a year Bartholomew was a friar, the goodliest friar to be found. He did everything that a friar should do, until St. Agnes' Eve came round, Now he's walked himself out through the gate, and he's walked himself down to the fair. He's made merry and danced and sung, until he couldn't walk back from there, Now the friars they came to look for him, though the hour was late and the night was black. When they found him it took 6 men and a horse to carry him back, 6 men to carry him back. Oh, he'd been doing things that a friar should never do. He was still singing songs that a friar should never sing. They brought the chief friar down from his room, who said, "This is a serious thing, a sad and a serious thing. For friars should not disport themselves, this way. So for going down to the fair, Bartholomew will have to pay. Bartholomew he must pay. So bring a bell, a book, and a candle, and stones both great and small. Take the unholy, holy man, and wall him up in a wall where he came from. Wall him up in a wall." The very next morning at daybreak, just as the thrush and the blackbird call, the abbot and his monks were walking just inside the abbey wall, "Oh, brother, who is that I hear shout? It is a voice I think I know. Here where brother Bartholomew was prisoned up a year ago, So they broke down the wall, and Bartholomew stepped out with a smile so sweet. Said the abbot, "He's been here for a whole year, with nothing to drink or eat, but a candle, nothing to drink or eat. He tore his hair, he shouted loud, he tore his jewelled habit. He said, 'What we see is a miracle. Bartholomew must be our abbot now. Bartholomew will be our abbot.'" Thank you very much.